It took me many years to even think about telling this story, and you will not find it anywhere else. I do not want it shared in a way that could reveal who I am or who I am talking about. This story is heavy, and although I will leave out some details, I need to let it out because I am struggling. Maybe someone listening can help me understand what to do next. I am a 33-year-old man with 3 younger sisters. When I was very young, my parents separated. At that time, it was just me and my little sister, who is only 14 months younger than me. When I was around 10 years old, my mother remarried. She had known my stepfather for only 6 months before the wedding, and I had met him just a few times. At first, I liked him. He used to bring cookies and candy for me and my sister. Her name is Heidi, and she liked him as well. After the marriage, my mother and stepfather had another daughter, Kelly, and later, Christy. For a while, things seemed normal. We moved into a new house. I had my own room, Heidi and Kelly shared a room, and baby Christy stayed with our parents. But a few years later, things started to change. Heidi, who was now 14, began acting strangely. When I asked my mom about it, she said it was just hormones. One day, I noticed a red mark on Heidi's arm under her long sleeve. When I grabbed her arm, she winced. I pulled up her sleeve and saw cuts. My mother brushed it off, saying she just wanted attention. At that time, I thought maybe she really did need attention, but nothing changed. A few months later, I woke up to the sound of Heidi vomiting in the bathroom. At first, I did not think much of it, until I heard my mother shouting that Heidi had to end a pregnancy. That night is burned into my memory. When everything was quiet, I asked Heidi who the father was. Through tears, she whispered, "It's our stepdad." My whole body filled with rage. How could I have missed the signs? The aftermath was worse than I could have imagined. My stepfather had been hurting all of my sisters, even the youngest. At first, my mother did not believe them, but I collected proof and went to the police. He was prosecuted. On top of that, he had been using our basement to produce drugs and sell them to a motorcycle gang. With all the evidence, photos, videos, and testimony, the district attorney still only gave him 14 years. He eventually got out, and now he lives not far from us. Since then, I have been consumed by the need for revenge. At first, it was petty things, like sending pizzas to his house or posting his information online. But it never felt like enough. I dug deeper. I found his personal details, credit cards, social security number, birth records. I used them to sabotage him, report him anonymously, ruin job opportunities. Yet still, it did not feel like enough. Recently, I thought about exposing him to the motorcycle club he betrayed during his trial. They do not know he gave them up, but I can prove it was him. I want them to know. I would never share this publicly where it could be traced back to me, but here I hope someone can give me clarity, or at least help me feel that I have done something. Sometimes, late at night, I picture him finally realizing that the truth is closing in. The thought gives me chills. But no matter what I do, the fear stays with me. What if nothing I do will ever be enough to make him pay for the darkness he forced into our lives? They say the most dangerous monsters don't lurk in the shadows of forests or alleys. They wait for you in plain sight, in places you've always believed were safe. That night, I learned that even a well-lit hotel can turn into a hunting ground. Hotels are supposed to be safe for hookups, right? Sorry, I'm terrible at titles. But being bored at home during the holidays and scrolling this sub made me want to finally share what happened to me not long ago. I'm a young gay man with a high sex drive. Naturally, I use Grindr, Scruff, and all the other apps to look for connections. I've always had a thing for older men, not grandpa old, but older enough to feel like they're in control. Living in a big city should make that easier, but even then, the apps can feel painfully dry. When I don't find anyone, the smart thing would be to just deal with my urges alone and go to sleep. But like any man in his 20s, sometimes desire drowns out logic. And on those nights, I find myself chasing whatever connection feels closest at hand. I usually play it safe. I send my best friends screenshots of profiles, names, numbers, social media links, hotel room numbers, everything. I keep them updated in real time, and they're amazing at looking out for me. If a drink is involved, I make sure it's poured in front of me or sealed. I've learned to keep myself alive in this world. A couple of months ago, I cast a wider net and joined a site that catered to the older-younger crowd. It felt outdated, almost like a relic of the early internet. That's where I found him. His profile said he was 71. His first picture was grainy, oversized glasses, a sweater, a button-down shirt. He didn't look like much, but when I asked for another photo, he sent it without hesitation. Still low resolution, but without the glasses, he seemed a little more intriguing. His profile said he was from the UK, tall, imposing. I imagined the accent, the novelty of it. But his words unsettled me. He liked meeting strong-willed men, then breaking them down until they became completely submissive. It was dark, but I told myself it was just fantasy. We exchanged numbers, moved to WhatsApp. He bragged that people told him he looked like a movie star in person, that he chose bad photos on purpose so his dates would be pleasantly surprised. The arrogance was obvious, but I brushed it off. He mentioned he'd be staying downtown in a hotel weeks later. I didn't expect to follow through. But then one lonely night came. The apps were dry. My need was high. I remembered him. I texted. He responded. He was in town, waiting. I told myself hotels were safe. They had to be. When I arrived, he looked just like his pictures, only older, droopier, and infinitely colder. His shoulders hunched unnaturally, his stance exaggerated like a cartoon mocking confidence. His eyes shifted constantly, sharp and piercing when they locked on me. Something about his presence made my stomach tighten. His first words weren't even hello. He pointed to a family in the lobby and muttered how they were broken and unhappy, analyzing them with eerie detachment. His American accent shattered the British fantasy. In the elevator, he studied me like prey, commenting on the way I supposedly breathed in my sleep. He described the shape of my jaw, how my tongue pressed against my teeth at night. His voice was clinical, invasive, as if he knew my body better than I did. It was the most bizarre and unsettling 2 minutes I'd ever had with a stranger. Still, I followed him to his room. My autopilot told me to be polite, to go along, to not cause a scene. I texted my friend the room number. He saw me do it. He smiled thinly. "You don't need to send that. I'm trustworthy." Inside, the room looked ordinary, too ordinary. But 2 glasses sat waiting on the desk, 1 wine, 1 Coke, both already poured. He started his game, asking me questions, twisting my answers into ways to belittle me. He said he never had casual sex, that men like me were dirty, that strong men like me gave him the most pleasure when they finally broke. It was dark, but I told myself it was just fantasy. We exchanged numbers, moved to WhatsApp. He bragged that people told him he looked like a movie star in person, that he chose bad photos on purpose so his dates would be pleasantly surprised. The arrogance was obvious, but I brushed it off. He mentioned he'd be staying downtown in a hotel weeks later. I didn't expect to follow through. But then one lonely night came. The apps were dry. My need was high. I remembered him. I texted. He responded. He was in town, waiting. I told myself hotels were safe. They had to be.
Some nights feel different from the start, like the city itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. In New Orleans, where the streets carry ghosts and shadows whisper between the bars, I learned that not every danger wears a mask. Sometimes it follows quietly, just a step behind. This happened in New Orleans a little while back. My boyfriend, 2 other couples, and I had spent the night partying in the French Quarter. After hours of drinking and wandering through crowded bars, we finally decided to call it a night. This was long before Uber or Lyft, so we knew we'd be walking back. Earlier in the evening, the sun was still shining when we left our hotel. But now, past midnight, the streets had changed. The echoes of Bourbon Street laughter faded behind us, replaced by long stretches of dim silence. I was on crutches, not exactly a great combination with alcohol, and my pace had slowed. My 2 girlfriends, Bree and Z, were a few steps ahead, laughing about a bizarre man we had kept bumping into. He wore tights and a cape, pressing himself against bar windows like some drunken Spider-Man, staring at us for long minutes. At first it was funny, later it wasn't. Our 3 boyfriends were even farther ahead, loud and carefree, passing a cigarette and veering suddenly toward a narrow alley instead of staying on the main road. That was when unease gripped me. The alley was dark, deserted, wrong. Just before they disappeared into the shadows, the old man working a nearby food cart called out to Bree and Z. They didn't hear him. His tired eyes shifted toward me, and when they locked on mine, his expression changed. It was sharp, deliberate, like he was trying to tell me something. "All little miss, I got you right here, Shaw," he said, sliding a steaming wrap across the cart. I shook my head, about to wave him off, but then his face darkened. His voice dropped low. "No charge," he said. Something in the way he said it made my skin prickle. Then, leaning closer, his words slipped out in a near whisper only I could hear. "Don't look, but they trailin' y'all since before you crossed." My breath caught. I knew instantly what he meant. Whoever they were, they had been following us since half a block back. "They gonna roll y'all," he added, his tone clipped, urgent. My stomach twisted, but I forced my face to stay casual. He was protecting himself, too. If those men overheard him, there was no telling what they might do. I raised my voice, pretending excitement over the smell of the food, calling Bree and Z back. They laughed, oblivious, returning with smiles as the vendor handed them steaming boudin balls. While they bit in, he leaned close to them as well, voice dropping again. "Tell them boys to stay on the main road, well lit, busy, no dark alleys." The alcohol buzz drained from us in an instant. Reality hit. We had been careless, stupid, trusting the night just because we were in a group. Using the cart as cover, we risked a glance. And there they were, 3 men standing a few storefronts away, watching us. Their body language pretended indifference, but the moment my eyes locked with theirs, they snapped away too quickly. The air around them felt wrong, thick, charged with something predatory. And the Cape Man? He wasn't among them, which only made the night more disturbing. There wasn't just one creep following us, there were many. The vendor had seen the danger long before we did. Without his warning, we would have vanished into that alley, blind to what waited for us. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if we had gone through. Would we have been robbed, beaten, or worse, would we have ever made it out at all? I never got to properly thank that vendor, but his quiet warning stayed with me all these years. He didn't just hand us food, he handed us our safety, maybe even our lives. And I still wonder what was waiting in that alley, patient and hungry, had he not spoken up.
No one ever warned me about the true price of stability. It doesn't announce itself at first. It slowly seeps through the cracks in your life, quietly and relentlessly. I married a 40-year-old man when I was 19. We started dating when I was 17. Yes, it was gross, but that's what happened. No romantic whirlwind, no grand love story, none of that existed. The truth is, I married him for his money. He married me because I was young and beautiful. That was our trade. Everyone knew it, even if they didn't say it aloud. He had what I wanted, I had what he wanted. Do I have redeeming qualities? Yes. I am kind, intelligent, capable. But none of that mattered in the equation of our marriage. It wasn't my personality that sealed the deal. It was my body, my youth, my appearance. That was my currency, and I spent it willingly. We've been married 20 years. We have 4 children. Our lives are comfortable, stable, predictable. We've grown to share interests, and we love each other in the way people do when they build a life together. But if I could go back and slap some sense into my teenage self, I wouldn't hesitate. Because no one tells you that when you marry for money, you owe him every single day, in every way. It's not just about sex. It's about power, control, and a subtle imbalance that seeps into every interaction, every conversation, every decision. It doesn't matter that I gave him 4 children. It doesn't matter that I've managed our home, our lives, our day-to-day existence for 2 decades. It doesn't matter that I've been a wife, a mother, a confidant. The fundamental structure of our marriage never changes. He is the provider, I am the recipient, and that debt never disappears. You feel it in every glance, every sigh, every choice that isn't entirely yours. Your life becomes woven with it like a spider's web, impossible to escape. The creepiest part is no one sees this, quiet, suffocating prison. People think money erases hardship, but there is a special kind of loneliness that comes with this life. My friends in golden cages understand me, yet I can't tell them I sometimes feel like a kept woman, unsure if I ever truly loved him. We drink our wine, laugh too loudly, compare our children, homes, and bags, because no one can cry first. I don't hate my life. I have comfort, stability, children I adore. But there is also a slow, gnawing regret, the kind that settles over years like a dull ache in your bones. Regret that I never got to fall in love the way young girls are supposed to, that I sold myself before I even knew who I was. My eldest daughter is almost the age I was when I met him. The thought of her making the same choice churns my stomach. I want to warn her, you don't just marry a man, you marry the imbalance. You marry the expectations. You marry that quiet debt that will never be repaid. But I stay silent, knowing even if I spoke, she wouldn't hear. And so I lie in the silence of our luxurious house, the whispers of the past wrapping around me. It's not the end. It's just another night in the cage I built 20 years ago. And that sense, that shadow lurking even in happiness, it is the creepiest of all. It all started innocently, or so it seemed. I have a confession that I can't bear to confess to the one person I wish I could tell. Instead, I'm spilling it to the void of the internet, hoping no one ever connects the dots. My confession is that I'm the reason my work bestie was fired, and now her life has been thrown into chaos. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and almost every day I wrestle with the weight of what I did. When I was a kid, I had no clear vision for my future. My parents are immigrants, so the ideal careers were doctor, lawyer, engineer, or dentist, but none of that felt right for me. I gravitated towards science in school, figuring I could tolerate medical school. But when the time came for admissions tests, I failed miserably on practice exams. I pivoted, took the LSAT instead, and surprisingly did well. I was accepted into a prestigious law school. I wasn't sure law was my calling, but my parents' excitement carried me forward. After law school, I landed a job at a top 10 New York City firm. I was miserable. My unhappiness started affecting my work, but in big law, it's notoriously difficult to get fired. I knew I needed a change. Consulting a recruiter, I shifted toward attorney development, managing junior lawyers and staffing them for projects. This was a better fit. I loathed legal work itself. Soon, I met Sarah, a junior associate. She was brilliant, ambitious, and always said yes. We became inseparable at work, texting, complaining about colleagues, sharing lunches, making even miserable days bearable. But Sarah's drive was unsustainable. I warned her to slow down, to decline some projects, but she ignored me. Her ambition was relentless, but her choices soon backfired. She began burning out, withdrawing, becoming reclusive. Yet our friendship endured. She still sent her witty, sharp texts that made my day. Sarah's workload had once been leveraged at 125%, well above expectations. By the time burnout hit, she was at 75% capacity. That alone wouldn't have been catastrophic, except that because we were friends, I kept staffing her on projects. She'd agree, then back out or underperform. Partners complained. I had to restaff repeatedly. It was stressful, frustrating, and I didn't know how to address it with her. She couldn't take criticism well. Then came the fateful meeting. My boss, Lauren, called me into the glass-walled conference room with managing partners. I feared for my job. Instead, they asked about Sarah. I explained that her work had suffered and multiple partners had raised concerns. Then, without thinking, I blurted, "I think we should fire her." Just like that, my words sealed her fate. Lauren looked shocked, but the decision was now in motion. Minutes later, I texted Sarah a fabricated story about an email issue to keep her calm. She believed me. A week later, I learned she had been fired without notice. I pretended to be shocked, took her out for drinks, listened to her cries, comforted her with lies. I was the architect of her professional downfall. Years have passed. Sarah is now Auntie Sarah to my daughter. We remain close, talking almost every day. She struggles financially, haunted by the abrupt loss of her high-paying job. And I carry the secret, a shadow over our friendship, the truth that I orchestrated her fall. She will never know. Sometimes, late at night, I picture the moment she opened that termination notice. I feel a chill thinking how fragile trust and ambition are. I loved my work bestie, and yet I destroyed her.